Gentlemen, our first sharer will talk about establishing the SPUS tertiary OBE framework and standardizing OBE mappings and templates, and this is an innovation related to curricular reform. To OBDIze the curricula of SPU Surigao, the Office of the Vice President for Academic Services established the tertiary OBE framework that serves as ultimate basis for OBE, OBTL, OBA, and CQI across all higher education programs. It comes with the formulation of the Outcome-Based Curriculum Design Development Review and Evaluation Manual, as well as the standard and cohesive forms, mapping templates, and matrices. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. Melvin Inyal, the Vice President for Academic Services, St. Paul University, Surigao.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Sir Nico. Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's
Morning
good.
po.
Wait, I'm setting up my. Okay, thank you. So, my respect to all the SPC sisters in attendance, lay administrators from the different SPC schools, teaching and non-teaching personnel, Pauline peace, and a pleasant morning. So in this presentation, I am going to share how St. Paul University Surigao established its outcome-based education framework of implementation for tertiary level and how we standardize the mappings, matrices, forms, and templates through a comprehensive outcome-based curriculum design, development, review, and evaluation manual. So this brief sharing opportunity will cover the following: RATIONALE, the SPUS OBE framework, the OBCDDRE manual, the mapping matrices, and the templates. So we all know why, as members of the academe, that we must live up with outcome-based education. In fact, the entire KRA2 of our strategic and operational plan is all about the adoption of OBE. So these are just few of the reasons. Number one, in 2008, CHED released initiatives that initiated the curriculum revision on the transformation from content-based curriculum to competency-based curriculum or outcome-based curriculum. In 2012, CMO number 37, series of 2012, was released, which is policy standards and guidelines in the establishment of outcome-based education system in higher education institutions, specifically those that are offering engineering programs. On the same year later, CHED also released CMO 46, 2012, which is the policy standard to enhance quality assurance in Philippine higher education through an outcome-based and typology-based quality assurance. And in 2014, released the Handbook on Typology, Outcome-Based Education, and Institutional Sustainability Assessment. While for us in the SPC Education Ministry and SPC schools, in 2014 up to 2018, there were initiatives done by the SPCEM on the OBE framework, and which serve as benchmarks for all the SPC schools. At the same time, Dr. William Spady conducted workshops on OBE in SPU Surigao, for example, and even in other SPC schools. And lately, we also based our OBE initiatives with the opportunities for improvement and recommendations from both our PAASCU and PACOCOA accreditation findings. So these are the PAASCU and PACOCOA recommendation findings, and the words that are underlined are actually the keywords that are actually matching the OBE framework that we considered and the OBE implementation of SPUS. So anchoring on the SPCEM OBE framework, here's the SPUS tertiary OBE framework. So this is actually anchored from the SPC EM OBE framework. So if you notice, there are frames here. So at the bottom part are the inputs and feedback. So we process our vision, mission, and core values. And we also gather data from our industry and community partners, some documents from the government agencies, accrediting bodies, professional organizations, alumni and students, as well as faculty and staff, our internal stakeholders. These particular inputs and feedback are actually processed for us to come up with the outcomes, to set the outcomes on different levels. So of course, the LPOs, this is actually set by the SPCEM, the life performance outcomes. This is also considered by SPUS as equivalent to graduate attributes. What kind of graduates are Paulinians, or what kind of graduates are SPUS workers, for example. And then the LPOs are cascaded down to the program, which has two outcomes. The PEOs are the deferred outcomes, and the POs are the program outcomes. So the PEOs are actually deferred outcomes, which can be measured 3 to 5 years or a few years after our students graduated. And then for the POs, these are actually measured upon graduation. And then we also set the course outcomes of each subject or course, and we call that CO, or course outcome. So these outcomes from LPOs, PEOs, POs, and COs are then prepared with a curriculum map so that we can benchmark that, align that curriculum map with the syllabi, the modules, and the course guides. Of course, we are also conscious about the constructive alignment of the learning outcomes, the teaching and learning activities, and the assessment tasks. And these particular courses delivery are actually assessed based on the outcomes of the course. We call that course assessment. And then for the program outcomes, when we assess that, we call them program assessment. And for the LPOs, we call them institutional assessment. And the results of these assessments and evaluation are actually considered as basis for our continuous quality improvement, or CQI. So this is actually the SPUS OBE framework, from the outcomes to the OBTL, or outcome-based teaching and learning, to the outcome-based assessment, to the continuous quality improvement. So to guide the stakeholders on the implementation of this OBE framework, we have produced the outcome-based curriculum design, development, review, and evaluation, or OBCDDRE manual. So this is our OBCDDRE manual. This is a 77-page document which serves as guide of St. Paul University, Surigao in the implementation of OBE across all programs. So let's just look at the table of contents. We have the introduction, the outcome-based education in general, the OBE principles and process, mapping the curriculum, assessment tasks and teaching and learning activities. And then we are more specific now into the OBE for St. Paul of Chartres Ministry of Education, which actually discusses about the Paulinian formators affirmation, as well as the Paulinian tertiary students affirmation. And then from here, we proceed to the implementation of OBE in SPU Surigao, which covers the outcomes, the mappings, the outcome-based teaching and learning, outcome-based assessment, continuous quality improvement, and of course the new OBE forms and templates. And I would like to highlight something in this document, which is actually the Appendix B, Curriculum Review Committee Terms of Reference. So this particular document is separate, but I also put this as an appendix of this OBCDDRE manual, because this will serve as basis for our deans and program chairs in the conduct of their curriculum review through the Curriculum Review Committee. So this is the terms of reference for CRC, or Curriculum Review Committee, which talks about the purpose, the scope, the membership and composition of the stakeholders or the members of the CRC, the responsibilities, the meetings, the guide questions during the proceedings, how to conduct student surveys, alumni feedback, industry feedback. So this is actually the CRC terms of reference, which forms part of the OBE implementation, because CRC, or Curriculum Review Committee report, will be a very good basis in the assessment and evaluation of our outcomes, not only in the level of the course, but also the program and the institution. Okay, so we are now clear as to the outcomes in different levels because of that manual. So just to reiterate, our levels of outcomes are actually from the life performance outcomes, or what we call graduate attributes, down to the program. So there are two outcomes for the program: the deferred outcomes, which we call program educational objectives, and the program outcomes as well. And then down to the course or subject, we call them course outcomes. And then down to the module, we say module outcomes. Down to the lesson under the module, we call them lesson outcomes or learning outcomes. So for the graduate attributes or life performance outcomes, we actually based it on the SPCEM OBE framework. So these particular LPOs, or graduate outcomes or attributes, are actually aligned with the identified performance components, the core values, the performance priorities, and of course, the life performance outcomes. So this actually answers what kind of graduates does SPUS produce, or what kind of Paulinian graduates are they from the time they enrolled in SPUS to the time of their graduation, to the time when they practice their profession, whether employment or being an employer, and beyond life. So for the program educational objectives, we're done with the graduate attributes. For the program educational objectives, or PEOs, these are deferred outcomes. They describe the career and professional accomplishments that programs are preparing graduates to attain within a few years of graduation. So ideally, we set this to be 3 to 5 per program, and there should be no redundancy. That's why we are conscious about subsuming some of the statements into another statement, because sometimes when we process the outcomes, we realize that something is subsumed already from the other. So PEOs are also known as program objectives, program deferred outcomes, or just outcomes. Okay, so PEOs are actually the things that answer the question: as Paulinian Bachelor of Science in Nursing graduate, what have I become 3 to 5 years after graduation? Or as Paulinian BSIT graduates, what have they become a few years after graduation? So that's why they are called deferred outcomes. Okay, for the program outcomes, this describes what students are expected to know and be able to do by the time of graduation. They should align with institutional goals like graduate attributes or the life performance outcomes, and the standards set by the industry and professional organizations. Compiling the POs should be a collaborative effort of the program team led by the dean. We are also setting this as statements from 8 to 15 per program and no redundancy. POs are also known as Program Intended Learning Outcomes by other schools, student outcomes by ABET, and just graduate outcomes by other schools also. So for the course outcomes on the level of the subject, we have what we call course outcomes. So course outcomes should be cascaded down from POs. They narrow down the essential knowledge content and the abilities and skills practiced. They are formulated as requirements for passing the course and should therefore be accessible. And we peg this from 3 to 5 per course only and no redundancy. And these are also known as course intended learning outcomes or subject outcomes. This answers the question, upon finishing the subject Engineering Mechanics 101, for example, EM 101, what can they now demonstrate? So that's the course outcomes. For the module outcomes, a specific and measurable statement of learning that students should be able to acquire by the end of a module or unit. So they must align with applicable course outcomes. And of course, these course outcomes must be aligned with the teaching and learning activities as well as the summative assessment task. And this answers the question at the end of the module, what have they learned and demonstrated? For the lesson outcomes, the last one, or the most specific one, a specific and measurable statement of learning that students should be able to acquire by the end of a lesson or topic. So they must align with applicable MOs or module outcomes. So if you notice, the alignment is actually cascading from the LPOs down to the POs and PEOs, down to the COs, down to the MOs, down to the LOs. So to ensure cohesiveness of the outcomes in different levels, we established the following mapping matrices. So this is the mapping matrices. One program will be one file because there are a lot of sheets in this particular file. So again, one program, for example, Bachelor of Science in Nursing, there will be one file. So first is the settings where we put everything so that these particular data will be used in the other sheets. And we also set here the terms that we officially use. So for the institutional outcome, we have the LPO. For the program level deferred outcomes, we have the PEO. For the program level outcomes, we have the POs, and so on and so forth. This also includes the program chair, the dean, the VP academics, and the president, so that all of these data will be used in the succeeding sheets. So the first sheet will be our institutional statements of philosophy and objectives, as well as the departmental statements of philosophy and objectives. In this case, College of Business and Technology as an example. And then for the next sheet, we have the mapping of the LPO to the institutional philosophies and objectives and the college or departmental statements of philosophy and objectives. And then next is the mapping of the program educational objectives with the LPO. So again, the LPO is mapped with the vision, mission, core values of the institution as well as the college. This time, we map the PEO with the LPO. And then we also map the POs with the LPO. And then if you notice, our LPO, aside from these lengthy statements, we use a shorter term.
Doc Ninial,
yeah.
Sorry to interrupt, but we cannot see the template.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
Because I'm using, I'm
at your end.
Yeah, I'll change the screen.
Thank you.
Wait, new share. Here, can you see now the template?
Yes, sir. Okay.
Yeah, okay. So again, we have the settings, we have the the institutional statements of philosophy and objectives, as well as the departmental. And then we have the mapping of the LPO to the statements of philosophy and objectives for both institutional and departmental. And then the mapping of the PEOs to the LPO, and the mapping of the POs to the LPO also. So if you notice our PEOs, we have 4, and we agreed that only the first PEO will be changed from program to program. The second, third, and fourth will be the same, which is lifelong learning, Paulinean affirmation, leadership, and management. And then for the first PEO, for example, in computer science or IT, we will say, pursue the computing industry as practitioners, consultants, specialists, and even entrepreneurs in the field. And we call that professional practice. So again, PEOs, we can only, the graduates can only achieve this a few years after graduation because they are deferred outcomes. So we are just looking forward to what will they become a few years after graduation. Okay, and incidentally, these 4 PEOs are also our criteria in selecting our outstanding alumni in our Monica Awards. So basically, this really are the PEOs that we want for our Paulinian graduates in Surigao. And then for the POs, again, this is actually specific to the program on BSIT. As an example, we can actually get these data from CMO or from any other sources like ABET or Washington Accord, Seoul Accord, like that. And for each particular PO, we also consider short term so that, or brief keywords so that it will be easier to comprehend or remember. So we also map our POs with the LPOs. So basically, the cascade, the aligning is really from the top to the down to the lesson. So the next sheet is our official prospectus template. So our official prospectus template looks like this, and I would like to emphasize on the last few frames or rows. So in this particular part here, aside from the grades of students on each particular subject, okay, we also wanted them to demonstrate the POs that we set. That's why in this particular demonstration of the program outcomes assessment, we use the activation levels D or ND. D for demonstrated and ND for not demonstrated. So we have not yet used this. We will be using this for the next for the succeeding years, especially for the next batch of graduates, so that even if they have finished or they have achieved bigger grades to make them qualified for a Latin honor, if their POs from 1 to 13, one of them is not demonstrated, we cannot give them the Latin honor because we have to make sure that all our POs, when they graduate, are actually crossed out or demonstrated. For the PEOs here in this corner, the assessment will be whether it is attained or not attained. But this is not for the graduation. Only the POs are criteria for are part of the criteria in qualifying the student for graduation. But for the PEOs, we can endorse this to our alumni relations office because they will be the ones to monitor if indeed the PEOs are actually achieved by our graduates a few years after graduation. So that's the fourth sheet. The next sheet will be the mapping of the because we have already set our subjects or courses in the prospectus as well as our POs, we can now do the mapping of the subjects and the POs. So this particular matrix here will explain that indeed these particular courses or subjects actually contribute to any of these particular program outcomes. So for example, IT 121, Computer Programming 1. So the program chair identified PO 1, 2, 3, and 4 as the POs that is contributed by IT 121 subject or Computer Programming 1. For Introduction to Computing, for example, PO 1 and PO 12. For Accounting Essentials, PO 1, 2, 7, and 12. So these particular mappings are very important because, again, we need to know that indeed these particular subjects contribute to the achievement of these POs or to the demonstration of these POs. Because if one particular subject does not contribute to any of these POs, then that subject does not have any room for our curriculum or prospectus. Okay, so and then for the course catalog, after this, this is the curriculum mapping. After this, we then deal with every subject mapping. So every subject mapping will be this one. For example, IT 121, there are 4 mapped PEOs. So if we go to the sheet for Computer Programming 1, this is the Computer Programming 1 sheet, which is the CO and the PO mapping. We have here the descriptive title and the course code, as well as the course description. And then here in this corner will be the course outcomes. And we have here a certain note, C6 to C10 are not advisable except for CMO reasons, because we really wanted that the COs are just enough, because we still have MOs, we still have LOs. So dapat hindi masyadong marami yung COs. We can subsume other COs to another CO. So if you notice, since in this sheet we map the Computer Programming 1 to 4 POs, PO 1, 2, 3, and 4. Therefore, in this sheet, only the PO 1, 2, 3, and 4 are in green. The rest are in violet. So meaning, these particular POs will not be contributed by this particular subject. So we map then our CO to the PO, and we map them according to activation degrees. Like for IT, it is set by the CMO for IT that the activation levels will be I for introduced, E for emphasized, and P for practiced. For engineering, IED, introduced, emphasized, and demonstrated. Okay, and that is true for all the subjects also. And if we successfully map everything, there are a lot of sheets here, we can then beautifully generate a course catalog. So imagine everything is in this particular file already, from the mapping, from the setting of the outcomes, to the mapping, to the prospectus, to the mapping of the course outcomes and the program outcomes, and then eventually generating a comprehensive course catalog. So that's the mapping or matrices that we set. Let me share my PowerPoint again. Okay, so after we establish the mappings, we then standardize the following templates and forms. So we have the templates and forms, starting off with our syllabus template for let's check. Syllabus template for Gen Ed. So here, this is our syllabus template for Gen Ed. So if you notice, all of these part 2, part 3, and part 4, as well as part 5 and part 6 are actually taken from the mappings and matrices that I presented a while ago. And then we proceed to the course outputs. This will be the basis for the grades. And then with that, we have the teaching and learning plan, textbooks, and other information. So this is for the Gen Ed because we agreed that the POs and PEOs of Gen Ed will be similar, will be the same. They will not align with the PEOs and POs of any particular program because it will be tedious. Imagine if you are a Gen Ed teacher and you are handling 4 sections from different programs, you will be making 4 syllabi also, 4 different syllabi for the same subject. That's very tedious. That's why we agreed that we will be formulating a uniform PEO and PO just for the general education program. That's why here we can check whether it is it belongs to the languages and literature, mathematics and natural sciences, and so on. So next is the template for syllabus on the Prof Ed or professional education. So this is the Prof Ed syllabus template. This time we have the department philosophy and objectives, as well as the mappings. And by the way, the teaching and learning plan will have the time frame, the course module, unit or lesson or topic, the course outcome that this particular topic actually addresses, the teaching and learning activities, the formative assessments, and the learning resources. And then we have the third template is our course guide template. So our course guide template, let me check. Where is it? This one. Actually, this is an example of a course guide from the College of Business and Technology. Since we have the reflex framework, which is Station 1, independent learning, Station 2, collaborative learning, Station 3, teacher-directed, Station 4, assessment and evaluation, we have to make sure that each particular subject that is offered will have a course guide, making sure that all the topics will be covered by any of these stations. That's why we can see some dates here for a total of 54 hours if this is pure lecture. And then the last template that I'm going to show you is the module, course module template. Here. So the course module template, can you see it?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so this is the course module template. We have module 1, for example, module title 1, introduction, module outcomes, and then topic 1, topic 2, topic 3, topic 4, topic 5. We have synthesis of the module and summative assessments for this particular module. We have all similar to another module. So the details of these particular modules will be like this. So the course information here at the top, we have the course outcomes, and then we start with the module 1. So here will be the module outcomes, and we have to make sure that this particular module is aligned with a particular CO. So you just put here CO1 or CO5. For example, module outcome 1 is aligned with CO2 or CO3, like that. And then topic 1 will have the lesson outcome. And then we have the TLA, the formative assessment, another TLA, formative assessment, another TLA, formative assessment, and so on. And then we proceed to the next topic, which will have another set of lesson outcomes, which will have to be aligned with the MOs, and so on and so forth. So that's for our templates. And then I'll go back to my PowerPoint presentation. So, and lastly, as part of the OBCDDRE manual, we also identify the following assessment and evaluation schemes. So for the CQI or OBA, outcome-based assessment, we identified some of these assessments on each particular level. So formative and summative and course outputs, this will be for the course level. For formative, the outcome assessed is the lesson outcome. For summative, the outcome assessed is the module outcome. For course outputs, the outcome assessed is the course outcome. So these will be conducted by the teacher, or interpreted and reported by the teacher, and submitted or shared to the dean, TC. And then for the program level assessments, we identified student satisfaction survey, exit interview for graduating students, exit survey, graduate tracer study for new graduates, and graduate tracer study for old graduates. So why do we separate these two? Because this one is to assess the PO, and this one is to assess the PEO. And then we also have assessments for the college. We have industry survey, industry forum, alumni forum, curriculum review committee report, alumni portfolio. And then for the university or institutional level, we have researches that measure attainment of collegiate LTOs, as well as researches that measure attainment of the vision, mission, goals, objectives, and core values. So this effort is still developing, a work in progress, but with the framework, the manual, and the templates for implementation, things are now clearer and easier. That's the end of my sharing. I will leave you with this quote from Ray Kroc. None of us is as good as all of us. Salamat Karajao, Caritas Christi Urgetno.